Okay, so you can see this drawer has seen better days. It's coming apart here, even though I have fixed it in the past. But it was before I started to use screws. So these are just, it looks like they're just a kind of a finish nail that I've nailed in there. So I'm gonna maybe remove at least these two, and then I'll use a screw instead. So I'll drill a finish screw in here, a trim head screw, and that should make it better. I'm also going to just putty this piece right here where the staples went in that I've broken off. The drawers are old, but not extremely old. The problem is my family tends to load them up with too much stuff, and then over time pulling that in and out when it's heavy, or when things stick up and hit the back of the cabinets and get stuck, it just weakens this wood here, since it's like a particle board or MDF or whatever, and that has this just melamine over the top. Anyway, so that weakens and then eventually just cracks off. So I fixed tons of these. This is probably to the point where I should just bite the bullet, and this is what I usually do, is I'll grab one of these pieces of white pine and use that to fix it. But I'm gonna just try and fix this one a different way with some putty. Now the first step is going to be to remove these. I've got two different tools that I might use for this. I've got these pliers here that might work, and then I'll try this hammer first because it's might be just small enough to get in there. Oh, maybe not. Might be able to. Nope. Need either a smaller hammer, or I'll need to use these pliers or get it some other way. So, all right, that worked just fine. To get that out, and that one out, because those were already coming out a little bit. Okay, so I got some clamps to daisy chain together to kind of tighten this up and hold it while I screw this in. So let's just put these on here. Real quick. And that'll hold it while I screw these in. It'll also hold it while I putty it later. All right, so now my drill. I would usually drill pilot holes, but since I already had the nails in there, I feel like this will still work. Ah, dang it. Well, I wish that wasn't as close to the edge, or maybe I should have done a bigger pilot hole. Actually, yeah, I'm going to do a bigger pilot hole for this one. All right, so we'll do a pilot hole for this next one. I'm not sure it's going to make a big difference. I think this was just so close to the edge where I screwed that in, since I didn't have a lot of space to do that. That's why it did that. But I am going to go with a 5/16 inch drill bit to make this a little bit easier, nicer for this next one. Maybe a little straighter too, since it seems like my nail didn't go in completely straight, or my screw kind of went off to the side there. Make that a little bit longer. It's so close to that edge that I can't really get it very good, but should be good enough, because the part that's gonna break is that part. where the edge goes in, or the end of that trim screw goes in. All right, let's try this now, and we'll see if this is any better. All right, that is a little bit better, but that should keep it pretty tight. Now, we'll just turn this up on the edge here. And now we're ready to putty these. Grab my putty, or plastic wood, I guess. Hopefully I have enough here. I just had this left over from another drawer that I fixed. So we will grab my putty knife. It doesn't have to be perfect, just because I can sand it down later with my sander. Get just a little bit more on there, then we'll do the other side. All right, well, I'd like it to be a little bit smoother than that, so I don't have to do as much sanding, but it's pretty easy to sand. And I need to save some for this other side, so maybe I'll call that good for now and see how much I have left after I do this side. I think I've found that I should probably just have put most of that stuff against the far edge, as close as possible to that far edge. All right, let me screw that back on just in case I need a little bit more of that, but first part was a little smoother. I think I just need to leave that on a little bit thicker this time. And we'll do this side carefully as well. Now, this is going to take a long time to dry since it's so thick. Now, I probably should have done this in layers. They do say to do layers if it's over a certain thickness, but I think those screws will hold it pretty well, so this is just an extra thing. I will now just let it sit there, and then I'll sand it down once it's dry. Now, if you are using nails, one other nice thing to have, especially when you're close up to the edge here, is some of these for like finish nails. They allow you to kind of put this up against the nail and then pound it in here so that you're not having to hammer in close to this wood here, which is kind of nice. So if I had noticed this issue earlier, I might have been able to pound those nails back in there before they bent and before this separated too much. But those screws are going to hold much better. Now, there's still a good chance that this wood's gonna break at some point, but I will deal with that when the time comes. And usually I just buy this white pine. Well, you could paint it. You could buy the MDF and put some melamine over it like they do for the original drawers if you want it to look exactly the same, but luckily my wife doesn't care about them looking exactly the same inside, which was a little surprising at first, but she wants to redo the kitchen, so at some point we'll get new ones anyway. All right, so now that this is dry, you can see that I've sanded this side here. I need to get the vacuum and vacuum that up, but I'll just sand this other side. And I'm not using a pretty rough sandpaper just because this is the inside of the drawer and I don't care as much about it being perfect. And so I'll just get it as smooth as I think I need it to be. And then if I wanted to, I could paint this. It is paintable. But I want to have it be as sturdy as possible since it's got the staples embedded in there. That'll give it some more support. I mean, the screws are pretty heavy duty, so that should be a lot of support, but it doesn't hurt that the staples are now inside of this plastic wood. All right, well, actually that actually took off a chunk. So I will sand that out a little bit. This one's, I might need to do another layer on top of this if I care too much to smooth it out a little bit. But that might be good enough. All right. So now it is all screwed together. Should last at least long enough to where we do a remodel and replace it with something else anyway. And next step would be to remove this front panel here, take off all these screws and replace it with something like this that's heavier duty. That's why I didn't just use MDF again, as I don't want to have the same problems. The only downside to that is if it does break through, it's probably going to break through the MDF on the side here, which means I'm going to have to replace the entire unit, which is not the end of the world, but I prefer to avoid it. Chances are this is going to last me another 16 years though.